I'm Casimir Brenwald, 38 years old, working as a bridge construction engineer who spent the past 4 years traveling across Germany for work. At this moment, I'm driving a rental car fresh from the airport, racing down the highway toward Minnesota. I kept my return a complete secret, making no calls and sending no messages to anyone. I wanted my arrival to be a surprise, but truthfully, I was afraid that speaking about it would break me with longing before I could even make it home. During those 4 years abroad, I lived like a machine while building massive bridges across the Rhine. Yet my mind stayed focused on only one bridge that truly mattered, the one that would finally bring me back to Leandra, my daughter, my own flesh and blood. Just thinking her name makes my heart race. We've been apart for 4 years now. She's 10 years old today. The last time I saw her, she was barely 6, with those enormous round eyes filled with tears, clinging desperately to my legs as though releasing me would make me vanish forever. That memory remains razor-sharp and painful as the day it occurred. I remember it with perfect clarity at Minneapolis Airport. Leandra was sobbing uncontrollably, her small voice breaking with every hiccup, sounding desperate and raw, as if her tiny heart was being torn apart. She kept saying she didn't want me to leave and begged to come with me. She clutched my pant legs while tears soaked her chubby cheeks. I forced myself to turn away and walk, with each step feeling heavier than the last, fighting the overwhelming urge to spin around and scoop her up one final time. If I had given in to that impulse, I might never have boarded that plane. It was the most difficult choice I ever made, but I convinced myself it was for our future, for a better job with better pay so that one day I could provide her with a life free from want. Now, after 4 long years, I've returned. The plane touched down at midnight. I immediately rented a car and drove straight toward Minnesota. The familiar roads feel oddly strange tonight. The wind seems unusually cold. Trees whip past the windows like ghosts racing through my memories. In my mind, Leandra appears crystal clear, though I wonder how tall she's grown. Does she still love chocolate ice cream the way she used to? Does she even remember me anymore? I smile to myself, but the smile quickly fades when I think about those rare video calls we had. My mother always found reasons to postpone them, saying Leandra was asleep or busy with homework. The photos she sent were consistently blurry, and Leandra's smile in them looked strained and unnatural. I told myself it was just poor internet connection, or that she felt camera shy, but deep down, a faint sense of unease had started growing inside me. I keep telling myself everything is fine now that I'm here. I'll embrace her tightly and make up for everything we've lost. The car comes to a stop in front of my parents' old house on the outskirts of town. It's late, but I can't bring myself to wait until morning. My heart pounds frantically as I turn off the engine and step out into the night air. The temperature feels unnaturally cold, and thick, eerie fog wraps around everything. The house stands completely dark, without a single light visible anywhere, which strikes me as very strange. My parents always stayed up late watching television, and Leandra would definitely still be awake at this hour. Could they be away somewhere? That doesn't make sense since I didn't tell anyone I was coming, but surely someone should be home. A chilling wind rattles the leaves around me, making the hair on my arms stand up. I approach the door and call out softly, announcing that I'm home and asking if anyone is there. No answer comes. I ring the doorbell repeatedly, with the chime echoing into the night, but the house remains completely silent. A suffocating sense of dread rises in my throat. Something feels terribly wrong. I dig through my pocket searching for the spare key, the one I've carried like a talisman throughout all these years. My hands tremble as I slide it into the lock and turn it. The door creaks open and I step inside into pitch darkness. The interior feels freezing, like walking into a tomb. The air hangs heavy and stale, thick with the smell of mildew. There are no signs of life anywhere. No television sounds, no smell of food cooking, no faint glow coming from the kitchen. I call out louder this time. My voice bounces off the empty hallway, answered only by its own echo. I flip on the lights and scan the living room. I see the old sofa and the dining table covered in layers of dust, but no people anywhere. I call their names again, searching desperately for any sign of them or Leandra. I rush to Leandra's room, praying she might be asleep in her bed. The bed sits empty with cold sheets. Panic claws at my chest as I wonder where everyone has gone and why the house feels so terrifyingly vacant. I turn to head outside and ask the neighbors what's happening. Then in the dead silence, I hear a faint sound drifting from somewhere in the back of the house. It's a weak, broken sob, muffled as if someone is trying to stifle unbearable pain. My heart seizes in my chest. I freeze and wonder what that could be, whether it's an animal or a person. I listen carefully, and it comes again, clearer this time. A choked, desperate whimper emanates from the direction of the old basement. Terror explodes inside me with blood roaring in my ears. I spin around and move toward the back of the house, each step heavy while I grip my phone like a weapon. Every footfall matches the frantic pounding of my heart. I have no idea what's waiting down there, or why that sobbing sounds so full of agony. I move deeper into the back of the house, past the pitch-black hallway leading to the kitchen. The sobbing grows clearer, no longer vague but ragged, labored breathing, broken and faint in the darkness, as if someone is fighting to draw air through unbearable pain. Each gasp stabs at my heart like a knife. Cold sweat breaks out down my spine. I pause for a moment, trying to steady myself. I tell myself to calm down, that it's probably just a rat or something similar, but my gut screams that something else is happening. The sound originates from the old storage basement at the rear of the house, a place almost nobody ever uses anymore. That basement is damp and cluttered with junk, where my father kept garden tools and random odds and ends. I push open the kitchen door as the flashlight from my phone sweeps across dusty cabinets and the untouched dining table. The crying echoes clearly now, distorted through the wooden floorboards. My heart pounds so hard my ears ring. I reach the basement hatch, a trapdoor hidden beneath a rug. My trembling hands yank the rug aside, revealing the rusted iron cover. I call softly into the darkness, asking who's there and who's down below. No answer comes, only faster, weaker breathing sounds. I swallow hard, lift the hatch and start down the narrow stairs. Each step groans beneath my weight like a wail in the darkness. The air below feels freezing and reeks of mold, making me cough as it hits my lungs. The beam from my phone cuts through the gloom. Every step downward drags me closer to the terror churning in my chest. I pray desperately that it's just an illusion, but the sobs grow nearer and more real with each moment. The instant I shove open the heavy basement door, with wood screeching on rusty hinges, my entire body freezes as if turned to ice. The sight that confronts me is so horrific I nearly scream out loud. Leandra, my daughter, lies curled up on the cold concrete floor with her ankle chained to a rusted iron post. The thick, crude chain has been padlocked around her thin leg, and the skin beneath appears raw, swollen and bleeding in places. Next to her lie only a few moldy scraps of food, including crumbled crackers and hardened bread crusts, along with a couple of nearly empty plastic water bottles. She lies there in the damp darkness, her tiny body huddled into a ball as if trying to hold on to the last bit of warmth she has. I can't believe this is real. My heart stops beating for a moment. My mind reels in confusion and horror. Leandra, my little girl, the child I love more than life itself, has been locked up like an animal. A scream rises in my throat, but nothing comes out except ragged, desperate breaths that mix with her faint sobs in this sealed tomb of a room. Tears pour down my face as I wonder where my parents are and how they could let this happen. I lunge forward, stumbling over the rough floor, not caring about any pain I might feel. I throw myself at her and wrap her in my arms. Her body feels like nothing but skin and bones, so light and so fragile. Her skin is ice cold and her ribs jut out beneath a torn, threadbare shirt. Bruises, both old and new, cover her body, including welts from belts, handprints, and marks I can't even identify. Leandra's breathing comes in shallow, barely perceptible movements, with her chest rising in tiny, labored increments. Her eyes flutter open, wide with terror at first, then fix on me as if she can't believe I'm actually real. She whispers in a voice as faint as a breeze, asking if I really came back to get her. I clutch her to me with arms shaking, holding her so tightly I worry I might hurt her, yet terrified to let go for even a second. The fear of losing her crashes over me like a tidal wave. She's teetering on the edge of death, with her breath fading, skin pale and eyes glassy with exhaustion. I choke out words through my tears, telling her I'm here and that she's going to be okay and not to be scared. Tears fall onto her tangled hair as memories flood back of 6-year-old Leandra laughing as I spun her around in the backyard. Now she lies here chained like a prisoner in this hellhole. I wonder who did this and whether my parents could possibly be responsible. It seems impossible, but the proof sits right in front of me, ripping my heart apart. I force myself to breathe and swallow the rage boiling inside me, knowing that saving her has to come first. Fear doesn't paralyze me because I can't let it. She needs to get out right now and reach a hospital for warmth and life. Letting go of her feels like tearing off a limb, but I have no choice. I tell her with a trembling voice that I'm getting her out and to hold on. I frantically search for anything to break the chain, looking for a hammer or a crowbar or anything useful. The phone light sweeps wildly across the space as I spot old junk, a rusty toolbox and a wrench. I grab the wrench and hammer the padlock with everything I have. Metal clangs against metal, echoing in the tomb-like room, but the lock holds firm. Every second feels like a knife to my heart. Leandra is fading before my eyes, with her breathing slowing down. I hit harder, with sweat mixing with tears and hands bleeding from the impacts. While I hammer away, I keep talking desperately to keep her conscious, asking her to look at me and remember the fairy tales I used to tell her, like Little Red Riding Hood, her favorite. I ask her to tell me again how the little girl beat the wolf. I babble anything I can think of to keep her with me, terrified that if she slips away once more, she'll never come back. She whispers something with eyes half open, barely audible, saying that the chain hurts. Her words cut deeper than any blade could. I swing harder, pouring every ounce of strength into breaking that lock. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the lock snaps with a sharp metallic crack. My legs nearly give out from exhaustion, but I can't collapse right now. I scoop Leandra into my arms, noticing she weighs almost nothing, like a dried leaf. I bolt up the endless stairs, through the kitchen, down the hallway and out the front door. Pure panic drives me forward as I don't dare waste a single second. I whisper to Leandra, asking her to listen and stay with me, telling her I'm taking her to the hospital right away. I carry her to the car and lay her gently on the back seat, wrapping her in an old blanket from the trunk. The car tears into the night with tires screaming on the asphalt. I drive like a madman, praying to God and to Rosalind and to anyone who will listen, that my little girl still has enough life left to reach the hospital in time. Streetlights streak past the windows as my heart feels ready to explode. I keep muttering, begging Leandra not to leave me alone and to please hold on, with tears blurring the road ahead. The way to the hospital stretches on forever, with every second becoming a battle for her life. The journey feels endless, and every moment becomes a struggle. I keep glancing at the rearview mirror where Leandra lies motionless on the back seat, her breathing so faint and her skin ghostly pale under the dim streetlights. I reach back and grab her hand, which feels ice cold, with her pulse being a fragile thread beneath my fingers. Every red light becomes torture as I lean on the horn, begging the road to clear. Terror roars inside me at the thought that if she doesn't make it, I will never forgive myself. I spent 4 years away only to come home and find my child in hell. I wonder who did this and whether my parents could be responsible. But I shove the question down because saving her has to come first. Finally, the hospital lights appear ahead, blazing like a lighthouse in the blackness. I slam on the brakes as the car skids across the parking lot with tires screeching. I scoop Leandra into my arms, noticing again that she weighs almost nothing, like a dried leaf, and run toward the emergency entrance in blind panic. The automatic doors slide open and hospital smells hit me, including disinfectant and the sound of beeping machines amid exhausted faces. I scream with a voice raw from fear and exhaustion, begging someone to save my daughter and to please save my little girl. Her tiny body goes completely limp in my arms, with Leandra becoming unresponsive, eyes closed and breathing barely there. Nurses rush over with a gurney and lift her onto it. One asks me calmly but urgently what happened to her. I'm shaking as I explain that my daughter was locked up, starved and chained, and I plead with them to save her. Tears stream uncontrollably down my face. They wheel her into the trauma room as the door slams shut in my face. The lock clicks with a sound like a verdict being delivered. I stand frozen, staring at those white doors as if they form a wall between me and my child's life. My legs give out. I collapse onto a waiting room chair, trembling with my head in my hands. My mind spins in chaos with flashes of the basement, the chain, the bruises, and her broken sobs replaying over and over. I keep asking myself how this could happen and whether my parents, the people I trusted most, could be responsible. I remember the day I left Leandra with them when my mother hugged her tight and smiled, telling me not to worry because they would take good care of her. Those words now cut like glass through my heart. Minutes drag like hours as the wall clock ticks slowly, torturing me with each passing second. I pace with fists clenched, praying silently and asking Rosalind, if she's somewhere up there, to please protect our daughter. Tears fall again as I wipe them away, trying to stay strong. The hospital buzzes around me with crying children and shouted names, but for me, the world consists only of that door. Eventually the doctor comes out, a middle-aged man with graying hair, glasses, and cold, searching eyes. My heart leaps into my throat. I rush toward him with a shaking voice, asking how my daughter is and whether she's okay. He pauses, looks me up and down, and says flatly that her condition has been stabilized for now and they're monitoring her. Then he turns and walks away without any further explanation. I stand stunned, wondering whether stabilized is all the information I'll receive. I get no details about her injuries or her state, and I can't understand why he looked at me as if I were the criminal. That detached attitude sends ice through my veins. I shout after him, asking him to wait and tell me what's wrong with my daughter. But he disappears around the corner. Just as I stand to chase after him, 2 police officers appear at the end of the hallway, striding quickly toward me. They're in uniform with stern faces and hands resting on their belts. One asks whether I'm Casimir Brenwald with a flat voice. I nod in response. Before I can speak, they grab me, with one pinning my arms while the other slams me against the wall. They inform me that I'm being detained. I feel stunned, furious, and helpless all at once. I demand to know what's happening and tell them to let me go because my daughter is in there fighting for her life. I struggle against them, but they hold firm as handcuffs click coldly around my wrists. My heart pounds wildly while my mind spins out of control. I just saved her and now I'm being arrested. One officer recites in a monotone voice that they received a report indicating I'm the person who abused and neglected the child. He explains that the little girl I brought in shows signs of severe, prolonged abuse. The words hit me like lightning striking. I stare at them with my mouth open, telling them they've got it completely wrong because that's my daughter Leandra, and I just rescued her from the basement. They don't listen to me, with skepticism written all over their faces. At that moment, the same doctor returns, standing beside the officers with an even colder expression on his face. It clicks into place in my mind that he was the one who called the police. That first suspicious stare and the icy demeanor now make sense. I growl at him, asking whether he reported me, and he nods without emotion. He explains that based on the child's injuries, they are required by law to report suspected abuse. I fight desperately, insisting that Leandra is my biological daughter, that I just flew in from overseas and that I could never have done this to her. I explain that I've been in Germany for 4 years, that I landed tonight, and beg them to please listen to me. Tears spill over as I plead, but none of them believe me. Their faces stay hard and unmoved. All the evidence points against me since I appear to be a strange man bringing in a gravely injured child in the middle of the night, with no paperwork and no clear story. I look exactly like the abuser would look, with clothes disheveled, hands bloodied from breaking the chain and face pale with panic. In desperation, I demand they search my bag for proof, shouting that my bag is in the car and contains my passport, plane ticket, and other documentation they should check. One officer glances at his partner, nods, and goes to my car in the parking lot. He comes back with the exact bag I described, dusty from the long trip. They search it right there in front of me and the doctor, finding my United States passport with German work visa stamps, a boarding pass from Berlin to Minneapolis dated today, an employment contract with the German construction company, and 4 years' worth of overseas work papers, everything proving I had just arrived and could not possibly have inflicted years of abuse on anyone. Only then does the doubt in their eyes begin to fade away. The officer removes the handcuffs and says in a softer voice now that they're sorry and that they have to follow procedure. The doctor steps forward, gives a slight bow, and adds that he apologizes for the misunderstanding, but explains that the child's injuries indicate prolonged abuse rather than recent harm, and they are legally obligated to report it. I'm released from restraint, but still required to stay for questioning. My legs buckle as I sink back into the chair with hands shaking uncontrollably. The officers take my full statement about my return, discovering the basement, rescuing Leandra, and my suspicions about my own parents. I tell them everything with my voice breaking from emotion while they write it all down carefully. They also receive the detailed medical report describing old and new bruises, signs of malnutrition, and chain marks on her ankle. The police inform me they will investigate the house and locate my parents, saying they'll search the property and find them, and instructing me to contact them immediately if anything else comes up. After the initial paperwork concludes, the 2 officers leave, leaving me slumped on the hallway bench, feeling shattered, stunned, and haunted. I bury my face in my hands as tears fall freely. I had just pulled my daughter out of hell only to be treated like the monster myself. I wonder how cruel life can possibly be. Memories of Rosalind flood back, and I know she would be heartbroken if she could see this situation. I stare at the trauma room doors, praying that Leandra will wake up. That night stretches on forever, with every second layered with fresh pain, but I know the fight has only just begun. After the police leave, the hospital corridor grows quieter, but inside my head everything remains chaos. The distant beeping of machines and the sharp smell of disinfectant make me nauseous. I sit there with my body completely drained after a sleepless night, yet I don't dare close my eyes even for a moment. Every time I do, images of the dark basement, the iron chain, and Leandra's skeletal little body flash before me, vivid as knife cuts. A little later, the same doctor returns. He stops in front of me and his face appears softer now. He says that once again, he's truly sorry for the initial misunderstanding, speaking with a voice that's low and warm as he places a gentle hand on my shoulder. He tells me that Leandra's condition is more stable now, and I can visit her in the intensive care unit for a short while. That apology feels like cool water easing some of the burning resentment inside me. I nod, stand up on shaky legs, and whisper a hoarse thank you to him. He leads me down the hall and opens the intensive care unit door into a brightly lit room full of monitors. I step inside and my heart stops at what I see. There lies Leandra, lost in drug-induced sleep on the white hospital bed with intravenous lines running into her tiny arm. Her face still appears deathly pale with sunken cheeks, but her breathing seems steadier now. I walk to her bedside, sit down, and take her small hand in mine. It feels soft but ice-cold, so thin and so frail. Tears fall again, dripping onto her skin. I whisper that I'm so sorry, and that her daddy came back too late. The intensive care unit remains silent except for the machines and her faint breathing. I sit there watching her sleep as old memories flood back like a slow-motion film, dragging me into the past. I remember the night Rosalind died right after a difficult birth. It was pouring rain at Minneapolis Hospital. Rosalind lay there pale as death with machines beeping their final warning. My world shattered in that instant. I fell to my knees beside her bed as she left me alone with Leandra, a crying infant wrapped in a white blanket. From that day forward, I became a single father. I brought her home and learned to mix formula, change diapers, and rock her to sleep in the middle of the night. I worked construction during the day, then came home to hold my daughter and tell her fairy tales until she fell asleep. Life was hard with money being tight, but it was filled with love. Leandra grew up in my arms, always lighting up whenever I walked through the door. Then the job offer in Germany came, involving a huge bridge project with triple the pay. I agonized for weeks. I wondered how I could possibly leave her when she needed her dad every day. But the promise of a better future forced me to say yes. I left Leandra with my parents, believing they were her grandparents and no one would love her more than they would. In Berlin, I thought of her every single day. Every month I sent money home, hoping it bought her good meals, new books, and warm clothes. Those rare calls we had were my lifeline to home. But now, sitting beside her hospital bed, I realize I never once heard Leandra herself say she was happy. Everything came filtered through my parents. The next morning, while Leandra remains unconscious, I step into the hallway and call my mother on the phone. My heart races, but I keep my voice calm, pretending nothing has happened. She tells me they're at home and Leandra is sleeping, saying everything is perfectly normal. I go numb, realizing those same lies continue flowing while my daughter lies unconscious in the intensive care unit because of their cruelty. I make a firm decision. I will keep everything secret and not let them know I've uncovered the truth. I will wait silently for them to come home and walk straight into the trap I'm setting. I will gather all the evidence necessary and expose their crimes in the light of justice. I drive back to my parents' house. I step inside through the door that's still unlocked from last night. I go straight to the back toward the basement. I re-enter while filming every detail, including the chain, the broken padlock, and the cold concrete floor where Leandra had lain. I kneel down with my fingers brushing the concrete, feeling my daughter's pain as if it were my own. I turn on the camera and record everything systematically. When I finish documenting the basement, I go into my parents' bedroom. The room sits in darkness. I turn on the light and freeze at what I discover. Scattered across the table are luxury shopping receipts for Gucci bags, Prada shoes, and a Rolex watch, all dated right after my money transfers arrived. There are also travel brochures and bank loan papers. None of the money I sent had gone to Leandra. It had all been spent on gambling debts, shopping sprees, and vacations while my daughter was chained in the basement surviving on stale bread. I photograph every receipt and every document. My bank statements will match these dates perfectly. When I finish collecting this evidence, I decide to talk to the neighbors next. I knock on the door of the neighbor next door. She confirms she saw them leave with large suitcases days ago, appearing to be heading to Arizona while laughing and looking happy. But then the stories turn horrifying. Several neighbors admit they had often heard shouting coming from the house, with my father yelling and a child crying inside. They explain that Leandra was almost never allowed outside except to go to school, always tightly controlled with no friends. Their words cut through me like blades. I thank them, record the conversations as evidence, then drive to Leandra's elementary school next. I meet her homeroom teacher in her office. She confirms that Leandra often came to class looking exhausted with eyes ringed by dark circles, acting jumpy and withdrawn. Faced with this mountain of evidence and testimony, I stand speechless, with pain and rage twisting inside me. I compile everything into a thick folder and drive to the police station. I place the folder on the desk, explaining that this contains the evidence of everything my parents did to my daughter. After reviewing everything thoroughly, the police classify the case as exceptionally grave, showing clear signs of child abuse, illegal confinement, and misappropriation of child support funds. They explain they're opening a formal investigation and that this evidence is enough to file criminal charges. They tell me to keep everything completely secret, so my parents won't have time to destroy evidence or flee. We plan the arrest together. It will happen the precise moment they return home. I leave the station with my mind spinning, but my resolve stronger than ever before. Those waiting days drag on forever. I stay with Leandra constantly, watching her improve little by little. Then the day finally comes. Early in the morning, the officer calls me saying they're coming back today. He instructs me to get to the house first while they position themselves nearby. I drive to the house and park a block away, then wait anxiously. I go inside the house and sit in the living room with my heart hammering wildly. When my parents' taxi finally pulls up outside, police cars surround it. They hurry inside and stop dead in their tracks when they see me standing with officers beside me. The officer steps forward and formally addresses them, stating that they are under arrest for child abuse, unlawful imprisonment, and financial exploitation of a minor. The words strike like thunder. My father screams in panic and thrashes violently to escape, but officers tackle him instantly. Handcuffs click shut around his wrists. My mother collapses to her knees, wailing. I walk up to them with eyes burning with cold fury and demand to know why they could be so cruel to my daughter. My father lets out a mad, manic laugh with his eyes blazing. He shouts that I think she's his granddaughter, but she's not, claiming she's no blood of his and that he's hated me since I was a kid. Those words stab deep into my heart. They get dragged to the patrol car as neighbors gather outside, shocked. I turn around, get in my car, and drive back to the hospital with tears streaming down my face. The weeks that follow pass in a heavy silence. I stay with Leandra day and night. Then the trial gets scheduled. The county courthouse is packed that day. Reporters crowd the entrance with cameras flashing. I hold Leandra's hand tightly as we walk into the courtroom. My daughter insisted on testifying even though the therapist advised caution. We take our seats. Across from us sit my father and mother in orange prison jumpsuits. In the early sessions, they still try to deny everything, but then the evidence gets presented. Leandra's detailed medical records get displayed. The photos I took of the basement appear on screens. Bank statements get presented. Recorded testimonies play for everyone to hear. Every single lie falls apart under scrutiny. When one neighbor's recorded voice plays, describing how she saw my father beat the child, my mother begins shaking uncontrollably. Then comes Leandra's turn to testify. She bravely takes the stand. Her voice sounds small but clear. She explains that her grandfather hit her with his belt and locked her in the basement. She says he told her that if she informed me, he would kill her. When she says she was so scared and thought she would die down there, the entire room goes completely still. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, my father and mother have no defense left to offer. Sentencing day arrives. The judge reads the verdict aloud. She sentences my father to 18 years imprisonment and my mother to 12 years imprisonment. The gavel falls. I hold Leandra tightly in my arms. A horrific chapter has finally ended. In the days that follow, I go back to my old company to hand in my resignation. I thank them, but still quit the position. I can no longer split my time between work and family. I receive a large final payment, which provides enough money for us to start a stable new life. I rent a comfortable, quiet house featuring a small garden and a room painted soft pink just for Leandra. The day we move in, she runs through every room laughing with pure joy. From then on, my entire world revolves around my daughter. I cook every meal myself. I drive her to her new school every morning. I take her to therapy twice a week. Life slowly settles into a peaceful rhythm. Yet even in this peace, one unresolved knot remains inside me. My father's words the day he was arrested still echo in my mind like a poisonous curse. Some nights I lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering who I really am. I'm not ready to face it fully yet. Right now, I only want to live for my daughter. The future refuses to wait patiently for me. It arrives on a late autumn afternoon. One sentence keeps looping endlessly like a broken cassette tape. I know I can't run from it forever. I decide that I will visit my parents in prison one last time, hoping to finally get an answer. I tell Leandra I have to go away for work for one day. She hugs me tightly. Then I get in the car and drive 3 hours north to the state prison. The visiting room is cold inside. I sit down with fingers laced together to stop the shaking. The iron door opens, and they get brought in to see me. When my father and mother are led into the room, their deterioration appears stark and shocking. The moment my father sees me, he explodes with rage, slamming the table hard. I take a deep breath and keep my voice steady. I tell him I was never ungrateful. I explain I never complained and never turned my back on family. I ask why I was always treated like an outsider. For a split second, my father freezes. Then he lets out a chilling, hollow laugh. He snarls while leaning toward the glass, saying it's because neither me nor that kid is his blood. I go completely still and silent. My mind goes blank with ears ringing. I turn to my mother desperately, hoping for a denial. But she only looks away with lips pressed tight. My voice shakes as I speak. I tell them I need the truth. At those words, my mother suddenly breaks into wrenching sobs. After a long while, she calms down, wipes her eyes, and turns to my father, saying with sudden resolve that he has to tell me the truth. Finally, he slumps forward and begins speaking. His voice sounds hoarse as he tells me I'm not his son. He explains that when I was 2 years old, he and my mother were just hired help for a wealthy family in Vermont called the Ravencrofts. The family tore itself apart violently. Brothers fought over inheritance with hired killers involved. My real parents were terrified their son would be murdered. They handed me to them with a suitcase full of cash, telling them to take me far away and never come back. I sit frozen as every word hammers into my understanding of my entire life. I wasn't Casimir Brenwald at all. I was a child hidden away and lost. My father sneers, saying he kept me only because of that suitcase of money. Every dollar I sent home was, in his mind, just me paying back the debt. He hated looking at Leandra because Ravencroft blood runs in her veins. My mother presses herself against the glass with eyes red and swollen. She says if I ever want to find out who I really am, this is the only clue left available. An officer gives me a slip of paper. My hands shake violently as I open it. Written on it is a name I've never heard before, Dorian Ravencroft, along with an old address in Vermont. I clutch the crumpled paper tightly and walk out of the prison. Casimir Brenwald has died inside that glass room. All that remains is a man holding a scrap of paper with a stranger's name written on it. I sit in the car staring at the note. Then I start the engine and drive home to Leandra. The days that follow see me living like a shadow of myself. I still wake early to make Leandra breakfast, but inside my head, the name Dorian Ravencroft burns red hot constantly. Every night after she falls asleep, I search the internet extensively. The Ravencroft family appears in old articles describing a financial empire that got torn apart by a bloody inheritance war. After many sleepless nights, I realize I can no longer live under a false name. I have to go to the source, no matter what I find there. I don't tell Leandra the whole truth about where we're going. I simply say we're going on a short trip somewhere special. Early one morning, I load the suitcase into the car and lift Leandra into the passenger seat. We slip away, heading for the address, a place in Vermont hundreds of miles from Minnesota. The drive covers nearly 500 miles. Leandra sings along to children's songs. I look at her and tears fall silently. No matter who I turn out to be, she remains my everything. After hours of driving, we stop in front of an ancient towering iron gate. A weathered sign reads, Ravencroft Estate, Private Property. My heart hammers frantically. I press the intercom button. I explain my name is Casimir Brenwald, but I think I might be Dorian Ravencroft. Silence follows. Then the gates slowly creak open. I drive up a long tree-lined avenue until a massive mansion appears ahead. Leandra wakes up and exclaims that it looks like a fairy tale castle. As we step out, 2 elegantly dressed people are already waiting. The woman appears to be in her 60s with silver hair and striking blue eyes. The man stands tall with white hair and a commanding presence. They stand silently watching us approach. Then the woman looks at me, freezes for a moment, and suddenly runs forward, throwing her arms around me. She sobs while calling me Dorian. She introduces herself, saying she's Isolde and she's my mother. She releases me and turns to Leandra. She sweeps her into her arms with tears streaming, saying she's her granddaughter. The man is Wendell Ravencroft. He studies me for a long moment, then nods. Inside, the mansion is vast. I sit on a leather sofa while Leandra presses close. Isolde sits opposite, unable to take her eyes off me. Wendell stands by the fireplace. I tell them everything from the beginning. My childhood, Rosalind's death, raising Leandra alone, the decision to work in Germany, the horrific discovery, the basement, The trial. I hold nothing back. Isolde weeps the entire time. When I describe Leandra chained in the basement, she collapses onto the sofa, sobbing. Wendell remains cool, saying they need definitive proof. He summons a servant to take hair samples, then sends them to the family's private laboratory. The next day, the DNA results arrive. Isolde opens the envelope with shaking hands. The document shows a 99.9% match. Casimir Brenwald is Dorian Ravencroft. Leandra is their true granddaughter by blood. In that moment, every emotion inside me explodes. I fall to my knees, sobbing for finally finding my roots and sobbing for 38 years lost. Isolde holds me close while Wendell places a hand on my shoulder. He says his son is welcome home. By the fireplace, Wendell slowly tells the story. When I was 2 years old, the family was engulfed in a brutal fight over inheritance. Their next target was me, the sole legitimate heir. To save my life, they sent me far away. After they regained control, they searched for years, but every trail went cold. The three of us sit there weeping and rejoicing, reunited after more than 3 decades. From that moment forward, our lives truly turn a new page. I'm no longer Casimir Brenwald. I'm Dorian Ravencroft, the long-lost son. But to Leandra, I will forever simply be Dad, and that is the most precious title I will ever have. The first days at the estate feel like living inside a dream. The mansion is immense. Every morning I wake until Leandra's laughter rings down the hallway. Isolde and Wendell spoil Leandra with every meal and smile. They're making up for more than 10 years without a granddaughter. Many times I stand watching them play together, realizing this is what real family feels like. One solemn evening, the formal ceremony recognizing me as a Ravencroft is held. Hundreds attend. Wendell places a hand on my shoulder and announces that Dorian Ravencroft has returned after 36 years lost. From this day forward, he is officially the lawful heir. After the ceremony, I'm given an executive role. I throw myself into work like a fish returning to water. The projects I lead consistently exceed expectations. Profit rises 38% in the first year. Leandra lives like a real princess, attending the finest school with weekly therapy sessions. 2 years fly by in the blink of an eye. Wendell, now frail, calls me into his study and says he's old enough to rest. He transfers full control of the corporation to me. Under my leadership, the Ravencroft Group enters its strongest era. Yet I remain the father who drives Leandra to school every morning and reads her bedtime stories. One peaceful afternoon, I stand on the balcony watching Leandra play with her grandparents. Golden sunlight falls gently on faces that endured so much loss. Looking back on the journey from darkness to light, I realize that blood does not solely determine family. Hearts and choices do. I learned that blind trust can destroy a lifetime. Only by finding courage to face truth can we save our future. True family is not a place where people wound one another. It is a shelter that protects and keeps each other alive through life's storms. I walk down to the garden where Leandra runs into my arms. I lift her high and spin her around as her laughter rings through the trees. Isolde and Wendell watch us smiling with warm eyes. I pull all 3 of them into one embrace. Life had taken so much from me, but in the end, it gave me back far more. I am Dorian Ravencroft, yet above all and forever, I am Leandra's dad.